Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I was just out here messing around with all of our solar systems, getting some insulation done. Our water shut off because we ran out of sunlight. We've got a very cloudy morning this morning, sitting out here about 8:30, 9 o'clock. Sun's just getting going, and we're getting our second layer of poly on right now. So when I click this on, you can hear this fan and this fan. This is our geothermal, and this is our compost heating over here, blowing really hot air out, about 90, 100 degree air. I was in here drying my hands up and warming them up. So we're about 58 degrees in the greenhouse. We had low 20s overnight, so about 22, 23 degrees overnight. The sun just got going, so we've got good temps in the greenhouse this morning. We're gonna get all of this poly on. We've got about 200 pounds worth of poly here. So I'm gonna post this camera up. I'm gonna throw it on my truck or something to get a good bird's eye view, or the best view I can. All right, so here we are. We've got our second poly on here. We have a bunch of extra. This is half a roll. I got another little piece of roll down on the other side here. So basically I used a little bit of my insulation to protect where I had sharp spots, where those cattle panels didn't meet all the way down at the bottom, because we built a frame around this. So we've got a double layer, good gap of air. The only thing I've got left to do is basically trim stuff and get all this excess cut off here. I finished the front. I've pretty well finished the back here. I got my old window that got blown off in a storm insulated all around that. My door's insulated nice. For the most part, back here is situated and ready to go. Everything's basically tacked down all the way up, and it forms a nice seal. Basically a 6 to 8 inch gap on the whole outside of this thing between layers of poly. So all of this compost heat that we're throwing into our greenhouse is certainly going to benefit us. We're just pulsing right now. Everything's pulsing. It is mighty warm in here. We're sitting at least 50 degrees, if not more. 51 degrees up there, and we have not had any sunlight to aid in the heat in this greenhouse. So everything is basically just us heating with all of these compost systems. You can hear my timer clicking on and off. So our fans are just pulsing. Our water pump's also building power and slowly bilging and slowly cycling. I can definitely feel the heat coming off of this corner right here. And all of this insulation is gold to me. That is perfect. We can basically just cut it to fit. We've got 2 or 3 layers up on that, a layer and a half on the door with a nice good gap. We've got a 2-inch gap on our window. We've got 6 to 8 inches on the entire outside of the greenhouse now, and we put a little more insulation up top. I've still got to clean this corner out. I've got another piece or two of my rigid foam insulation I'm going to go up on the back of this wall with, and we should be set for winter. We've got a lot of good insulation factors. We've got heat coming in for free that will last the entire winter. So being able to hold all of that heat in a double layer poly is going to be way more valuable than just having one layer. As we were blowing all of our compost heated air up and around the whole greenhouse, we were shedding all of that heat and transferring it with the outside at a very high rate. So we basically doubled our R factor and got a nice dead air gap, so we have even better insulation than just doing 2 layers. We've got a nice air gap in between, and I'm thinking I may run some electricity out here in order to run a nice outlet in this corner from the garage over there. Basically hook up some type of blower that I can blow air in between the layers from inside the greenhouse. So if I can really build upon all of that insulation and heat the outer layer, I can really prevent any damage or frost inside the greenhouse, allowing me to grow all of these crops throughout the entire winter and without a whole lot of work. Once I set all of these systems up, this is basically ready to go, and all of this is going to take care of itself day in and day out. So I want to run outside real quick and kind of talk about how I got the poly cinched and just the little tips and tricks for getting everything situated properly here. So when we come out, you can see our outer line where we tacked the second layer of poly down. So now we've got that all covered in. We had a few sharp spots, a couple corners, and I had put some insulation foam and basically taped that down with some of our metal tape just to prevent any premature wear on the poly. So when we came through and we're pulling all this down here, I was pulling this plastic out, wiping it down, and just basically pulling this as tight and just stomping on it with my knees and holding that taut and then pressing the board. We were just pushing the board right up against the base in order to create a nice taut rigid stretch on the poly. And it is increasingly difficult the colder it gets because your poly wants to shrink up. So if it was a nice hot day, I would have a lot more success. So once you get the poly up and over, the first thing I do is basically stretch the top and then come to the sides. But we laid all these boards out basically to just hold the poly once we got the top on. So we used all the boards, laid them in place, so we already had them ready to go, and then all we had to do was come along and stretch the two tops. So we pulled from one peak, pulled and stretched over here, while simultaneously pulling and stretching on the opposite side. So we got that top piece nice taut and situated, and then tacked it down, and then we're able to pull the sides tight one at a time. And I found this method really secures the poly and makes for a nice solid greenhouse here. So that was quick tips on securing your poly. We've had a bit of experience with securing all these polys, so that was the best way I found to do it. Basically just pulling it tight and sliding your board up and tacking it right to it, ready to go. So the next thing that I'm going to be bringing from the greenhouse is a nice little methane capture kit. So I grabbed myself a small little ball valve and a bunch of 1/4-inch fittings here. Got a bunch of 1/4-inch nipples, a nice 1/4-inch T. I'm going to try and bubble all this methane through and capture it through some water and then into a burn tank. I've got a few more items that I'm going to bring out to use for this, and I will show an update once I have all of that situated. This was just kind of a little teaser here. Got my little plumber's putty to seal everything up. Hopefully I can get a nice little system where I can come in here, turn the methane on, burn it, and basically heat a little stove and heat a whole bunch of bricks, kind of like a rocket stove for a thermal mat. All right, so it's about time I get everything cleaned up. We've got the poly on. I am going to just run around and cut all of the excess off, and then I will cinch up everything else that I have to another day. For the most part, we are 99% done. This is sealed, it's not gonna blow away. So I'd like to thank everybody for their time watching this video. I'm out here warming my hands up on this little pipe. I've got at least 120 degrees coming out of this thing because it's just slowly pulsing, so it's not constantly blowing the 100 and 110 degree air. It's having a little time to recharge in there. It's really awesome to have when you're working outside and it's freezing out, to be able to come in and actually warm up inside the greenhouse. This is a very cool setup, and I'm super interested to see how well this progresses throughout the winter.